Live streaming is on.
Good afternoon, all. So we will be beginning our interactive session, Endo Solutions. So we have our resource person, Dr. Keshav Prasad, HOD, RV Dental College, Dr. Vinod Kumar R, Founder and Director, Roots, Dr. Paras Mul, JSS, he is serving as a reader there, Dr. Ranjini M.A., reader from Dayanand Sagar Dental College, and we also have expert panelists, Dr. Prahlad Sir, sir, General Secretary, IACD, and Dr. Ponnappa sir, HOD, Coor Institute of Dental Science. So I request Dr. Keshav Prasad sir to take over.
Okay, I will be doing the screen sharing on behalf of everyone.
Okay.
Is the slide visible to everyone?
It is visible.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting off with the main case discussions. So the last half an hour, all of you have got a particular case and you have discussed whatever the question was asked for. Now, your representatives are here to give us the input on your behalf. So let's start with today's session. Over to Dr. Vinod for the first case.
Good afternoon, all of you. Thank you, Dr. Ranjini. Good afternoon, the expert panelists, Dr. Ponnappa sir and Dr. Prahlad, and all my fellow colleagues. Thanks for this session today. So this is the first case, and this is a 28-year-old male patient who was referred by a general dentist for an opinion what to do with this particular tooth. So the groups which got this case, can you just tell me your opinion just looking at the radiograph initially? The patient wanted to save this tooth. That's the whole idea. The general dentist wanted to get my opinion before doing any further treatment. So clinically, yes, the patient had pain, which was not very significant for him, but only thing is that he wanted to save the tooth. The pain was moderate, but radiograph was sent to me before I could see the patient, and I told I would like to see the patient. So what is your opinion on the radiograph? Anybody?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
I am Abhishek from Coor Dental College. I am representing Group 2.
This case was first shared to the Group 1, right?
No, sir.
So
all 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, as per the X-ray, it was not given as like any symptomatic or asymptomatic. So we all came with a, since there is no clinical symptoms that was being given, we came to a diagnosis of symptomatic irreversible pulpitis or asymptomatic reversible pulpitis. As sir told, now if there is pain, it is mostly symptomatic irreversible pulpitis, and to the periapical periodontitis, that too. Like we were discussing, like as we didn't have any symptoms as such, so we had a confusion with our diagnosis on asymptomatic apical periodontitis or symptomatic, and there is a root caries with respect to the mesial root. These were our diagnosis, and as we have not done any diagnostic test, we could not further get to what was the pulpal status as such. So this is what we came to from the X-rays.
So basically, this case was shared to you because all of you are going to graduate, and then tomorrow you'll be practicing endodontics, and then most of your colleagues and dentists who are practicing nearby could send this X-ray first, rather than talking anything else. They would not even discuss anything about the symptoms or anything. They say, "What is your opinion?" So we wanted to keep you all in the blank because we want to simulate a clinical situation for all of you, which you will be doing in the future. So just a radiograph is usually sent by a referring dentist, and this is what we
Sir, then we'll go with symptomatic irreversible pulpitis and symptomatic apical periodontitis. and the root caries
So that will be your diagnosis.
Yes, sir.
So what would be your treatment plan?
Sir?
Treatment plan. What would you like to do with this tooth? Would you like to save it, salvage it, do
Sir,
something else?
considering the age, the patient is only 28 years old. So we'll first of all give a we'll go for RCT. First, we'll give a deep marginal elevation, and we'll do the root caries management. Deep caries elevation will be done and RCT. Then the root caries with GIC preferably, and with like if there is a need of flap raising, we'll raise the flap and give a GIC restoration.
So by just looking at the radiograph, you wanted to decide so many things?
Sir, as I told, we had no other symptoms or like we have not given any other. They were our options, sir.
My question to all of you is that first I would like to ask you, by just looking at the radiograph, you would come out with a treatment plan, or you would do something else?
Sir, we would like
somebody else is answering.
Previous dentist.
Sorry, ma'am.
Would like to ask the previous dentist about the history of the patient.
Yeah, history and other thing is fine, but I just want to know: do you want to do yourself? I'm asking? What would be your plan of action? Would you just give your opinion looking at the radiograph, so many treatment plans to your referring dentist, or would you like to do something, take an action from your end?
Sir, we would try. We will call the patient to our side, and we would have done the test also before the treatment plan. Just because the treatment plan was to be told, so we came up with the treatment.
So that's fine. But my whole thing is plan of action.
Would like to ask the patient his opinion. If he really wants to save the tooth, we'll tell him that it's a questionable prognosis, and we'll ask him for his informed consent, and then we'll go ahead with it.
What do you mean by questionable prognosis? You have not even seen the case. You have seen the radiograph. My point is, I think doctor said that he wants to see the patient. After seeing the patient, what do you want to do? Anybody else from the other groups? See, no case comes to you just like the way it happens in your colleges. Okay, life is not simple after you graduate. My advice would be that what would be your plan of action? By just doing diagnosis, you want to treat the radiograph alone, but you don't. Ultimately, you're treating the patient. What would you do?
Clinically evaluate
clinical evaluation of the patient, very important. Yeah, go ahead. What all you would like to evaluate?
So first, we would evaluate how much carious structure is present and how much healthy dentine is present, and the status of the periodontium around the tooth.
So what all evaluation tools you will use while evaluating the patient clinically? That's on the diagnosis part. Like for me to observe a tooth, I need to know. Okay.
So we need to know the mobility.
Okay. Slide. Can you show this next slide, ma'am? Can you just show the clinical picture of the slide, doctor? So before that, there was one more, right? Yeah. Before that. No. Just go back. Yeah. So clinical picture, you were not able to see. This is how the clinically it was. So what all factors? You will remove that temporary filling, right? You will evaluate all the remaining tooth structure.
Gingival polyp.
Yes.
Should be addressed. Gingival polyp should be removed with laser, and then after caries and restorative material removal, we have to do pre-endodontic buildup plus sealing of the perforation area, and then rubber dam infusion. Then following which access CMV and calcium hydroxide dressing should be given, and patient should be informed in between flare-ups can occur, and obturation and with a good ceramic sealer and observation of the patient should be.
Okay. So do you depend on this radiograph which was shown to you, or do you want to do anything with the radiograph?
So we have to take angled radiographs,
Very good.
and we
Why a
also
different
can,
angle radiograph?
because we have to know what is the type of resorption here. Just because there is a radiolucency, we cannot go on to diagnosis, because it could be overlap radiograph. It could be internal resorption also. So what happens is, if we are taking angled radiograph, if it was internal resorption, there would be a ballooning of the root canal, or there is no change in the position. But if it is external root resorption, there will be change in the radiolucency. So we can arrive at more definitive diagnosis. So what the diagnosis which we are making now, it is just a provisional. Based on radiograph, we can tell it is invasive cervical resorption. But to achieve a definitive diagnosis, we have to further go on radiographic evaluation, and also CBCT is required.
What are the causes of cervical resorption, if at all, if this is a cervical resorption in this case? And also, what would be the radiological changes in the cervical resorption as compared to any of the caries resorption, caries radiolucency? Do you have any idea on that?
Inflammation. So chronic inflammation could be an inflammatory resorption.
See, I want you to think more on the clinical end, where you are going to be a practitioner tomorrow, not an academician, which you can also be. But ultimately, for a patient, see, we are all into academics, we finish, but ultimately we are coming and doing a practice. When we do a practice, when such a situation arises, you have to be more practical oriented rather than thinking too much academically oriented to treat this case. Yes. At this point, why this case was discussed on the first place is to make you think differently from what you have been thinking all these 3 years. So simple diagnostic radiograph with 2-3. I am not requesting you to go ahead and do a CBCT to evaluate. A simple diagnostic radiograph taken in different angulations can give you a different information. Do you all agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically, somebody was talking about calcium hydroxide. So how many of you use calcium hydroxide routinely in your cases like this? If you see a simple periapical lesion, I call it as a simple periapical lesion. I don't call it in a way that it is aggressive, it is a cystic or anything bigger than that. So you rely on calcium hydroxide, wait and watch till the pus oozes out or something like that, or pus gets done. There was no discharge, nothing. Okay. So why did somebody mention about calcium hydroxide? So how many of you use magnification in your clinical practice in your colleges? Hello?
We use, sir.
What magnification do you use?
So 3.5x.
3.5x with light? So
Yes, sir,
with the
with
help of
light.
magnification, can you actually do some diagnosis on this? Can you clinically be sure of by viewing through a magnifying, means your loop or your microscope, that you have a better edge over a person who does not use? In your treatment decision. So
Yes,
the
sir,
treatment
because
decision, will it vary based on your magnification, whatever you're using, be it your loop or your microscope? Will your treatment decision change for this particular case? No idea?
Sir, with the use of magnification, we can go for a more conservative treatment option, sir.
Like what?
And also the preparation, removal of the caries, and without.
No, I was more focused on diagnosing, saying that somebody was saying that to talk about consent with the patient to salvage or save. Will magnification help you to salvage or save? Is my question. So, any suggestions from the experts, Dr. Ponappa sir and Prahlad, if you want to add something on this before I move to the next few slides?
Yeah, Dr. Vinod, am I audible?
Yeah, sir, perfect.
Yeah, I'm glad at least one student was able to tell about resorption, because initially all we're talking about caries only. We need to look at resorption for sure, because differential diagnosis of resorption has to be looked into. That's one. Second, you mentioned about magnification. The point to be noted here is when you magnify and check, if you're able to find that there's some crack or something in the cervical area, saving this tooth may not be very viable. So we have to look at those 2 points also. One is resorption, and second is if there is a crack propagating further deeper into the gingival area. Considering that the lesion is very close to the alveolar bone, we need to look into those 2 things from a practice point of view. As you rightly said, we are not looking at academic point of view, from a practice point of view.
Thank you, sir. That was wonderful. So, Prahlad, do you want to add anything? Dr. Prahlad? Is Dr. Prahlad there? Okay, anybody else would want to add saying that will a magnification help in a diagnostic protocol? So, Dr. Ranjini, I think I'll take another 5 minutes. So, can you just show me the other few slides? So, what was exactly done is that a different angulation of the X-ray was taken, so that we could see that there was no involvement externally. That means to say, unlike the what you call the distal area, the mesial area was very much well intact. Removed all the decay and everything. And in fact, if you see the angulation change in the X-rays as I was moving on, and there was no involvement of the caries here. We don't know whether it was caries or the referring dentist tried to do something searching the canals. Number one. See, this is something when a case comes from a referring dentist, you should always think of something. You have never seen a lesion like this. If it's caries, it would involve something like this, right? Don't you think so? It will actually arise somewhere on the smooth surface, or caries which is involving class 1 and a class 2 and then going. But this was very insignificant for me. I don't know caries coming in this areas in my practice. It does come, but it was very insignificant. That's why I viewed under magnification. So it was a clear cut saying that the dentist tried to do something. That is one of the possibilities, but dentist was not trying to claim that he did something. But then, since I was sure that this wall was particularly safe enough, I went and checked under the magnification, and through this, I also could find a middle mesial. And then it was shaped. The next slide. So this was all nicely cleaned and shaped, nicely isolated and obturated and referred back to it. So in this, the post-endodontic restorations is not done at my practice until and unless the referring dentist does. So the idea here is you can see that magnification played an important role for my treatment plan, where my treatment plan was entirely changed. And I was more, what exactly happens today with all of us is that we look at our diagnostic aids in more, we give them more credit to the diagnostic aids rather than your clinical acumen. So that is not my naked eyes, but it is a simple magnification. So it's not magic, it's magnification which helped me to save this tooth. So this is something which I wanted to share with all of you. Please don't be blind on just reading your textbooks. You have done that well, you have prepared you well, your teachers have motivated you, charged you up, but ultimately what is required, now you're going into a field to fight your own battle when nobody is going to be around you. So what's going to be around you is like, if you want to have your teacher all throughout your life, magnification is one of the best tool to take it along with you, and that will be your teacher lifelong. It will teach you much more newer things and treatment plans which you can come out, which none of us have ever seen. I'm not saying that you can come out with your own treatment plan based on evidence. So this magnification is an evidence-based treatment protocol, which I wanted to emphasize on. So thank you all. Thank you, expert panelists. Thank you, Dr. Ranjini and my team. I think if there's no questions, we can move to the next case.
Dr. Paras, please take over.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjini. Thank you, sir. A very good afternoon, Dr. Ponnappa, sir. And also good afternoon to Dr. Vinod and Dr. Keshav Prasad and all my friends and students. This case, I think, just shared in one of the group, this case B. So I request all the students who have made up a plan regarding the diagnosis prognosis and the treatment. Can the students come up with answers?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Sir, for this patient, first, as we are seeing the... hello?
Yes, it's audible.
Sir, as we are seeing the clinical picture first, as we can see by clinically first picture, that the patient oral hygiene is very poor.
Yes.
We can see plaque accumulation, as well as there are generalized recession is seen, gingival recession is seen.
Yes.
This is the first thing that we could see from the picture. Then we saw the history that the patient gives a dull pain and it's not localized.
Yes.
Then one more thing that we saw that there's a sinus discharge is there. But as we saw we can see in the second picture, the sinus opening is also not exactly located below the second premolar or the first premolar. It's in between first and second premolar.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the first thing that we saw. Then there's one more thing. As the occlusion of the patient is not proper, we can see that there is opening in the interior, whereas high occlusion in the posterior. And when we went to the radiographs, the first radiograph, which is written as initial presentation, in that when we see the second premolar, so there is no periapical changes. There is a widening is seen, but the periapical changes are not seen. But if we see the 6, in 6 mesial root, there's a widening is there.
Okay.
As well as when the sinus trace in picture, sir, it's not very evident. We cannot exactly make out where it's going. So it's not very clear. So the second thing which we are going to advise for the patient is we're going to do a TOP. We're going to do a tendon percussion for a premolar, second premolar, and the first premolar. If we are not able to diagnose where the patient is actually having a problem, either in the first premolar or the second premolar, then the second thing, we will do another angulated radiograph to see the proper, we'll put the sinus tracing and we'll see where exactly it's going. Then if after all this, if we come to a conclusion that if the patient says, if we see that the patient is saying POP in relation to 6, then we can go for then after this, as we cannot, by seeing all this, we cannot come to a proper conclusion for the diagnosis. So if the 6 is vital, we'll do a vitality, but there's a crown. So we'll go for a crown removal and we'll do a vitality test. In 6, if it's vital, so 6, then we're gonna exclude the 6. Then we'll do also pocket evaluation, the pocket depth evaluation. If pocket depth evaluation is more, then we'll, as oral hygiene is bad, pocket depth is more, then we can also go, it's somewhat periodontal problem as well. Then if the 6 is vital, 6 we are excluding. If 6 is non-vital, then we can see that 6 might be one of the problem. Then if 6 is a problem, we can give a diagnosis as symptomatic irreversible pulpitis. And if we see 6 is vital, then we go for the second premolar. Second premolar, second premolar, then we'll go for a diagnosis related to previously treated symptomatic apical periodontitis. Then the treatment plan, and if the patient is affordable, we can send, without removing the crown, we can send the patient for CBCT also. So by CBCT, we can actually rule out the proper, we can actually see if there's any periapical problem, is there a missed canal or any fracture. So after then we can go for the first treatment. First treatment, as seeing the oral hygiene, we will send the patient to the Department of Periodontics for the oral phase 1 therapy treatment. After phase 1 therapy, we can call the patient, we can see and evaluate. So after phase 1 therapy, if it's not subside, then and if it's, as I told, if 6 is already non-vital, then we can do the root canal of 6, and then we can see
refresh.
So I understood your plan is that you have to go for a comprehensive approach. First, we have to treat the periodontal status of the patient. Then you are looking at the adjacent teeth, whether there is a any
sir. And
problem
if
with the
all
molar.
this ruling out, nothing comes up, then we have to, if the tooth is a problem, then we'll go for the premolar. We'll see and we'll take a CBCT. And then if the premolar is involved, then as already post is there, the prognosis becomes very poor for the patient. And but seeing the first radiograph, it is evident that the premolar is not involved because periapical changes are not, there's no lesion in periapical, sir.
Okay, so you have told your opinion, and what would be your final diagnosis, for example, or maybe a provisional diagnosis for a premolar and for the molar? In one line,
The
you can finish.
provisional diagnosis, as I can give, is in relation to second premolar. If it's already, then I can give a previously treated symptomatic apical periodontitis.
Okay, for the molar?
So molar, then it will be symptomatic irreversible pulpitis with apical periodontitis.
Yeah, since we are not able to do whatever we are telling here, so we will keep that in your mind in the background that you have to do all those things, because it is very, very vital that before you start the case, basically any case is just like solving a puzzle. So maybe now I can hear out to any other students. Any other students, even if you agree with the same diagnosis or if you have any variation, you can please come up and you can give your opinions.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm representing group 5.
Yes.
And the diagnosis that we came to was previously root canal treated tooth with chronic periapical abscess with 2-5. And the reasons could be a missed canal, or as it looks in the X-ray, it seems to be under-obturated.
Yes.
But since the patient did not give any history of pain after the treatment, that is since 5 years, there's no pain as such. It could also give us to a differential diagnosis of vertical root fracture. And there's also a post placed and a PFM crown placed. Which means that the tooth does not have enough structure to resist fracture, and it could lead to a VRF10. But this can be confirmed only with the CBCT and once we know the probing depth, because nothing is much evident on the X-ray.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay, I take it. So the addition is like almost the diagnosis what the second student has told is almost similar to the first student. So maybe it is directly straight away going to the vertical root fracture. Any other students want to add some inputs? Any other students want to add some inputs? Okay. Dr. K.C. Ponnappa, yes, sir. You please, sir, you can share your thoughts.
Dr. Paras, I just wanted to see the radiograph.
Yes, sir. Dr. Ranjini, the radiograph.
Yeah, it is there, sir.
Yes. Any other students want to add any inputs?
Sir, Paras, sir, you switch off your video, please.
Okay, okay.
They're not able to see the screen sharing, slide sharing. Are you all not able to see the slides?
Able to see, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, please go ahead.
Should I continue or someone is speaking?
Sir, you can continue.
Dr. Paras, I think the second radiograph shows that on tracking it's going towards 5.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Probably, I think there's a cast. They must have put a cast post and given a crown. So I rather go with 5 being infected, not on 6.
Yes. Yes,
clinical decision. I think that would be better, I suppose. And earlier you mentioned also in that I think there was a sinus opening on the buccal aspect of between 5 and 6, isn't it?
Yes, there is a sinus opening between the premolars, basically.
Between the premolars.
Yeah, between the premolars, not exactly between 4 and 5. In the second slide, can Dr. Anjani, could you put the another slide? Next slide.
Yes, sir, I have put it. There is a lag.
Okay, the second slide of this. Yes, yes. So here, yes, sir. So the sinus is almost between on this 5 only, but more toward the molar.
You're right.
Yes. So as you told, sir, like they have, there is a some sort of coronal reinforcement with a metallic, some metal filling is there. So it could be a cast post, a short cast post, or it could be any amalgam core like the Nair cast post, something like that, amalgam core. So something was there. So since if shall I continue with the final what has actually happened?
Yeah, please continue.
So this all the history and all has been discussed already. Now coming to the diagnosis, like one student told that it could be due to 6 also, but 6 on vitality it was normal, and the 6 has a metal crown, so we could actually do the vitality through the cervical part. So it was a thin metal crown, so vitality was not an issue. We could get the vitality. Then probing, definitely some probing depths were there from periodontal aspect. There were shallow pockets, and the patient was sent to a perio opinion, and they told that there are shallow pockets. And the position of the sinus, it was very crucial because the periodontal abscess, the sinus position would be more coronal compared to the endodontic pathology where the sinus would be more apical. So definitely it was a endodontic pathology rather than a periodontal cause. Then coming to the sinus tracking, the Gataparcha placed here seems to be a little thinner because the opening was small, and hence a thicker GP couldn't be placed. But still we could find out the position where the GP ended. It's almost going to the junction of middle and apical third. So further, since the whatever we have discussed till now, those were there in our mind that either it is a acute apical periodontitis, which is not the which could be there because it's not chronic because there is no periapical lesion. Though the obturation is short, one of the students told the obturation is short, so there may be a missed canal or there could be a granuloma, but the lesion was not there. So we are in doubt that it could be some sort of acute pathology rather than a chronic pathology. So as we discussed earlier, we wanted to send the patient to a CBCT. So the patient was advised for a CBCT, and when we got the CBCT again,
can I just say?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. One of the students was mentioning that they will plan and remove the crown, and already the patient has given a history of RCT done before, and
yes,
there was a localized swelling very close to the premolar, right?
Yes, yes.
And somebody said like we'll remove the crown.
Yes.
As a practitioner, at least you need to think twice before removing the crown.
Yes.
So there's
Yes,
always
sir.
a possibility that along with the crown, the tooth structure is also going to come out. And before sending the patient to other departments or taking a perio opinion, we can straight away ask for a CPCT, make use of technology.
Yes.
Because the patient is giving a clear history saying that there is pain on biting.
Yes, sir.
For that reason, at least we could have gone in for CPCT.
Yes, sir. So yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So as sir has told, sometime the students definitely that is there in the books, and that is the right approach probably in some cases. But in the clinical practice, what happens is that the patient wouldn't allow to remove a crown because they would have spent so much of money, and then they would have gone for endodontic treatment. They would think that again the procedure the patient has to undergo. So it becomes a little burden for them. So probably they would think for a easier solution, like what it is, let me know. Instead of I won't want to go for the removal of the crown and going for the disassembly and removing the post. So as I told, that option should be given to the patient, but maybe you have to explain to the patient that probably we can go for a scan, which would solve most of our queries. Now, once the scan was advised, it was also kept in mind that the CBCT scan for vertical root fracture in a non-vital obturated tooth, it is not highly reliable because the artifact is always there because of the Gataparcha beam hardening and the streaks are there. So still keeping that in mind, we advise for a scan, and it is just for like in this case we were able to appreciate there was a fracture line on the 3D image which was seen clearly on the distal side. And also the radiograph showed one reduced line next to the obturation, but we cannot take that as a fracture line because we know that the artifacts which are there in a radio opaque material, even with the CBCT. So they were not conclusive. So only we went ahead with the finding what we saw on the 3D image where there was a clear-cut crack. So evidence also has shown that the CBCT for vertical root fracture, it is a good tool for diagnosis of fracture, but it's not 100% reliable. So we have to be very careful when you advise the CBCT scan for diagnosis of vertical root fracture because the accuracy is not very high, and it has not been like conclusively statistically significant that cracks can be detected, especially in the tooth which are obturated. So we have to be very careful. In vital tooth, there is high chance of detection of fracture rather than in the non-vital obturated tooth. However, this scan helped us, and then patient was explained the procedure, and he understood what was the problem, and he agreed for the extraction, and he went for implant later. So just to complete correlate with what has happened in the patient's mouth and the extracted tooth, we could just we dyed the tooth with the methylene blue, and clinically only it was visible, the fracture was visible. But still, if you want to see what was the extent of the fracture, it was a through and through fracture, and it was running from the mesial to the distal side completely. And still further, actually, when we saw while removing the tooth broke, and why it has broken is that they had given amalgam core. That amalgam core were extending 3 to 4 millimeter into the radicular part, and when they prepared the canal to receive the amalgam core, there was a deviation. So if you can, if Dr. Anjani, can you go back to the previous slide? You can see that when the shift X-ray was taken, you could appreciate that the deviation of the amalgam core, what they have placed. So the deviation ultimately was transferring abnormal high forces to the premolar root. And as you know, the premolar root are slender, and they are susceptible to, they are tapered and slender, and they're susceptible to wedging forces. So this amalgam core was actually causing a lot of wedging forces, and ultimately it had fractured. Hence, we were able to see the white split onto the 3D scan. Studies have also shown that if you want to diagnose the vertical fractures onto the CBCT, there are so many parameters depend on the scanner, the radiation dose, the orientation of the crack, then the gap between the crack. So many things are there. So in this case, the most probable cause we could correlate was that the amalgam core, which was there into the root canal, led to the vertical root fracture. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so then still we want to add to some of the discussion, like what went wrong with this treatment? Why did the tooth fracture? As I told earlier, the choice of the post was the reason why it has fractured. So probably we can always think for a fiber post. Dr. Vinod, if he's there, can you please add some input, sir, regarding this?
Yeah, thank you, Paras, sir. That was a wonderful presentation. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So idea is that since once you get into practice, you will only get these kind of cases. But if you were the first to treat the premolar, what would have been the approach? Is what we wanted to bring upon here, and we have added this one point called as the prophylactic post. I don't know how many will agree with me, but then all the premolars, I think Dr. Ponnappa sir, add on if you can just help me with this. That most of the premolars right now, Dr. Paras presented as a vertical fracture, but I always see horizontal fractures with premolars, wherein you use rotary preparations where you remove the pericervical dentine to such an extent internally, and there is also a crown preparation. Finish lines are huge because you want to give an all ceramic crown and then zirconias, and we are promoting mostly crowns of newer generation which requires a thicker margin. In such a case, the pericervical dentine is entirely removed. So we are now debating that should we have a prophylactic post for all the premolars so that we have such a problem avoided, be it a vertical or an horizontal fracture. Can anybody add on this? If you have seen that in your clinical, in the colleges, that the patient comes with a lot of horizontal fractures of the premolars because the tooth structure is not there. Ponnappa sir or anybody else? Dr. Keshav sir, I think you can add, help us on this. You must be seeing such cases in the department.
Dr. Vinod, one doubt I have.
Yes, sir.
Are you implying that prophylactic post is better, or is it a question that should we be using prophylactic post?
I am saying prophylactic post is must, especially for premolars. So the reasons which I mentioned is that because of our aggressive preparation with the rotary as well as the crowns what we are doing. But why I'm stressing on this is that with the problems whatever we are facing. See, the problems are there. People come, we can retreat, extract, give an implant. But when you know that the anatomical nature of the tooth, why don't we make it a norm for all our premolars that an endodontically treated tooth, because it's going to be restored with a crown by default from the commercial point of view when you go to practice, it better because if you are treating it, it is better to go on for a prophylactic post is my point. And you have seen the reasons, no sir, because there are a lot of horizontal fractures which are coming with premolars.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that about horizontal fractures, but I'm not in a position to comment on prophylactic post because I would like to read a little more literature on that because I'm not too sure of.
What exactly happens to me is that since I've been in the college and practiced for a long time, I have had patients who travel a lot abroad. And this has been an international norm that one of the patients I had treated, I treated on number 7 and I didn't put a post for that patient, a known patient referred by a dentist colleague, and he was a brother of a dentist. And he comes back after 4 years and asks me, doctor, why didn't you put a post to? Because he had an horizontal fracture of the crown. So this is a practice everywhere abroad. As well as if you think scientifically that you're reinforcing the tooth, especially because of the over preparation, I would say optimal preparation, but we don't know who's using which rotary files and we don't know what is the amount of extent of damage with the caries or anything. So looking at all these things, I would want to make a request to all the colleagues and the students that why don't we think of a prophylactic post for our premolars?
Vinod, I'd like to add something here.
Yes, sir.
The thing is, I've got to see a lot of horizontal fractures, but depending on how well you do the access preparation, depending on that, we can plan for a prophylactic post. But not as a rule that okay, every premolar that we treat it needs a post.
I'll agree with you for an intentional root canal, sir. But most of the people who come to us are already having problems. So when we're treating a
The thing
premolar,
is, even if you're planning for a prophylactic post, you are creating a post space. So at a future date, it might again lead to fracture. Again, the patient might come back and say that it was not needed and why did you put it? Need to think of those.
one is that it's debatable, but I have also given substantial points to support my way of what I've been doing is to look at this as an option, so that we don't have these kind of this doctor particularly whoever prepared this tooth, Dr. Pares. Why he's prepared that is because most of the premolars, you know that the core will not be there. Ideally speaking, you should do a cast post and core for such teeth wherein rehabilitation, ferrule effect, all those things. But none of the general dentists are trained to do that and they never do that. Today it is immediately fix the solution, fix it immediately as early as possible. So the retention used in this form was by using an amalgam core. So ultimately, most of the tooth structures, I agree with you completely, decision has to be made on the table or the treating case that how well is your core retentive enough. At the same time, it should not also, propagate any cracks according to the preparation. Now you can be super conservative with the post as well. Your post preparation space need not to be additional from what you have coronally prepped with your rotary files. Since your rotary files give a good amount of paper, there are posts which you can, conservatively manage using the same the taper what is created by your rotary file. So there is no additional post preparations required. So these are some things which I wanted to add, but definitely it is again a choice by the clinician. But I would always humbly request all the clinicians to think about the anatomy of the tooth. And we do not have any gauge to measure the remaining dentin healthy thickness after we finish our treatments.
Okay, thank you, Vinod sir. Thank you, Dr. Paras. Shall we move ahead with the next case?
Thank you.
All right. All right. Dear PTs, yeah, something new to think about you got, a new controversy, and definitely a lot of literature search is required here, and also thinking and analysis for this particular new topic. All right. So let us proceed to the next case. The next case is 11-year-old female patient reported to the department. The chief complaint was pain in relation to the upper right front tooth since 1 week with no history of trauma. Clinical examination revealed palatal lateral incisor on both sides of the arch. Maxillary right lateral incisor, that is 1-2, showed a deep palatal groove. The tooth was tender to percussion and the pulp sensibility test showed no response. Can you see the image, palatal image, which has been inserted? A deep palatal groove is seen. Now this is the preoperative radiograph. I think all the PGs are jumping to answer this. Yes, the groups which got this particular case, I would wish one of you can unmute and start off with the discussion. Can you give us a diagnosis?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Nilima Isani from Krishna Dev Rai Dental College, and I'm representing Group 10. So most of the clinical history was given to us, and the clinical evaluation was also done. But there are two tests that I would like to add here. First is I would like to check if there is any pocket that is present with respect to the deep palato-gingival groove. So that we would like to assess that. And the second thing is we would advise for a CBCT to check the extent of this particular palato-gingival groove. And one more thing is the pulp vitality testing in immature teeth is not very reliable because the myelinated nerve fibers do not reach the pulp dentin complex to the plexus of Rushkow. So we cannot rely on these pulp vitality tests. But the patient was giving a history of pain, and she did have pain on percussion. So we came to a diagnosis of symptomatic irreversible pulpitis with apical periodontitis secondary to dents in dente with respect to 1-2.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So
And
let
one
me
more
help
thing we
you.
can,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let me
ma'am,
help
one
you
more
with
thing.
that.
Yeah, there's a canine erupting as well, so we need to
Right.
keep that also in mind. So depending on the CBCT, and we would decide the treatment plan, ma'am. So basically, if we had to divide a treatment plan in 2 stages, we would first deal with the palato-gingival groove and check if it is involving the pulp, and then go about it. And then if the pulp is involved, we would definitely go for a regenerative procedure because the patient is very young, and we can see that the root development is still in stage 3 with thick dentinal walls and open apex. So if the pulp was involved, we would go for these 2 treatment phases, ma'am.
Wonderful, wonderful. Here, I'll give you one more clue here. Well,
Yes,
the groove was not extending into the pulp, and it was very shallow. It was, though it was very close to the pulp, it was not extending below the CEJ.
Okay, ma'am.
Now proceed.
So, ma'am, the pain could actually be, I don't know how far this can be true, but it can also be due to the erupting canine. If
No, I will tell you it was only because of this tooth. Now, if it is because of this tooth, how will you like to manage this case?
Ma'am, then we would proceed with the protocol as explained, ma'am. We would first eliminate the palatal groove and restore the defect with resin modified GIC, and then the main treatment would be a regenerative protocol. So for that, we would first of all place a rubber dam because isolation is a must when it comes to regenerative procedures, and then we would perform an access opening, and there would be copious irrigation with 1.5% sodium hypochlorite, 20 ml for 5 minutes, followed by saline. Then we would proceed with the placement of a triple antibiotic paste or a double antibiotic paste. But triple antibiotic paste might discolor the tooth, so we would go for a double antibiotic paste or an antibiotic paste with cephalosporin. And then we would seal this with the GIC or a composite because we need a good coronal seal, which is a must in regenerative procedure. Then in the second appointment, we would re-enter and irrigate the antibiotic paste with saline, followed by irrigation with 1.5% sodium hypochlorite again, followed by saline, and the final rinse would be EDTA because EDTA stimulates the growth factors from the dentine. So therefore, we should always find the final irrigation should be with EDTA. We would dry the canal and we would induce periapical bleeding. We could also use a scaffold such as an autologous blood concentrate, and then finally seal this with cola tape followed by MTA, GIC, and the final restoration would be composite. And then the follow-up procedure would be followed in 3, 5, 8, 16 months. And depending upon the success would be, so basically the primary goal would be to get rid of the symptoms and to see some bone healing if it is present. So this would be a primary goal, ma'am, and the secondary goal would be the closure of the apex and the thickening of the dentinal walls. And a treatment would be successful, a high rate of success, only if the pulp vitality test is positive. So that would be the treatment protocol that we would follow.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, you've given a complete treatment plan. I think you heard Dr. Shruti's lecture very attentively. Very good, wonderful. You have answered most of it. First thing is, why do you want to do regeneration in the first place?
Ma'am, the patient is very young and the dentinal walls are very thin. So we want the root development to proceed. Like we want it to complete. We could do apexification or apexogenesis, but then the thickness of the dentine would be compromised again. So I think regeneration is always better in this case.
Yeah, you are right. Anybody else would like to answer? Would like to add any other points? Okay, in that case, I have a few questions still. First thing is, yes, you said you will enter the root canal and you will irrigate. Would you like to instrument the canal?
No, ma'am, we do not instrument if we are planning. That's why only copious irrigation with 1.5% sodium hypochlorite. That is, literature even says that nowadays we shouldn't use chlorhexidine because they damage stem cells. So
That's
we are
right.
only going to use 1.5% sodium hypochlorite in the first visit, and not more
Doctor, how do
concentration.
you want
also,
to make
only
1.5% sodium hypochlorite? Let us not be textbook oriented. Where is 1.5% available? Do you make it yourself in your department?
So
No. Let us, because see, ultimately, you and I are practicing in India. We are only getting 3%. How do you want to dilute it to make it 1.5%? Is there any protocol you follow? How do you dilute sodium hypochlorite? See, I have seen people not using sodium hypochlorite. I have classically seen people diluting with saline. Do you think the dilution of sodium hypochlorite can happen with saline? Or is there a specific way of diluting the sodium hypochlorite? Dr. Ranjini, if you are allowed me this question, because I was focusing on 1.5. I don't think so anyway. I've been fighting with the manufacturers to make me 5.25%, which nobody wants to do it. They just say they pick up something from, it's just like an RP what anybody uses. They say this is only available, sir. If you want to use, you use. Otherwise, we don't have anything. So in that case, when regeneration we are talking, and she was mentioning quite effectively that we have to use only 1.5 for health of the tissues underneath. I want to understand if anybody there can answer this question, that how do you want to dilute a sodium hypochlorite? Do we think it's a manufacturer's job, or it is we as a responsibility as a clinician to also know about our chemicals, that can we do something customizable at our clinical end? Dr. Paras, anything which you would like to add?
So that's what the minimal instrumentation technique is the best, what has been discussed. And regarding the hypochlorite, yes, we don't have 1.5%. But
So
the
you
American
should not be doing
Association,
regeneration in India.
No, the
So
American,
that is the first protocol. So this case has to be referred to some American dentist.
No, AAE actually recommends 1.5. However, there are some formulas by which we can actually change the concentration.
Yeah.
That one has to be.
So I want to ask, I want an innovator from this group. We want people who can innovate stuff for our profession. So you're all budding endodontists. We need a lot of you to dedicate your time to research as well, because the way this doctor presented was amazing. And we also request that if you could give me a solution for this. Don't blindly dilute it with saline. Saline will actually not dilute the sodium hypochlorite. The concentration of sodium hypochlorite will still remain. The water, the saline and the hypochlorite will not have any reaction to dilute the concentration.
Okay, thank you, sir. Something to think about and ponder over. Definitely our PGs will actually go and do a little bit of research about this, I'm quite sure. Now, coming back to the case, I think Nilima has already told most of it very rightly to tell you how the outcome was. See, as she said, the dense part was sealed with flowable composite. Then the root canal was accessed and a very slightly scouted intracanal medicament was placed. In the next appointment, when the symptoms reduced, re-entry of the canal, bleeding was induced, then PRF was placed, then MTA was placed, and this was restored. Now, to show you some amount of follow-up of this case, we have a follow-up of only 4 months, and even in 4 months, you can definitely some amount of resolution of the periapical area. So that goes to say that some amount of healing is already started, and the whatever the treatment has been followed is on the path of success. Thank you so much, Nilima. 1 or 2 points I would like to add here is, now there are some limitations for this particular revascularization procedure. Now, one question I would like to ask is, in case we do the revascularization, we are trying with triple antibiotic or double antibiotic base to abate the symptoms, right? What if the symptoms don't improve or we don't have redence from the symptoms? Then will we continue with the revascularization procedure? Anyone? Should we continue?
Ma'am, if the symptoms don't go,
yeah, symptoms
ma'am,
don't reduce.
then no. We can actually repeat the first appointment protocol and see once again if the symptoms are going, ma'am. If they're not, then we shouldn't go ahead with the revascularization protocol. We should go with just closure of the apex with a biodentine or MTA barrier.
Oh, very good. In that case, we go ahead with the MTA apexification. Well, this is a wonderful case which has been completed. Now, I would like to add another parameter here. What if the coronal tooth structure was a little lesser for this particular patient and we had to go plan a post-encore as a final endodontic post-endo restoration?
No, ma'am, post-encore is contraindicated. Cases which are indicated for post-encore should not be attempted for regeneration or revascularization.
Yeah.
That's one of the contraindications.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, you answered most of the question. If anybody would like to speak of anything regarding this particular case, you are free to go ahead. Okay, thank you. So only thing about revascularization is in the literature, you will get a lot of case reports, yet we are awaiting the long-term results, that is the yearly follow-ups. With this, I conclude this case. I request Dr. Keshav Prasad sir to start with the next case. Thank you all. Keshav sir, over to you.
Sorry, I muted myself. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Anjani. This is a case where a 50-year-old male patient was referred to the department for opinion with the 4-6. Radiographs were taken. You can see there is already gingival recession, percussion involvement, and there was a periodontal pocket. And OPG was taken. What is your treatment plan for such a case?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
So, sir, looking at the clinical, the radiograph and the fact is mentioned that it is a non-vital tooth with a furcal lesion that we can see. We came with a diagnosis of it being a primary periodontal lesion and secondary endodontic lesion, and the treatment plan that we had come up with was root canal treatment with respect to 4-6, followed by periodontal therapy. And if possible, and if the patient is agreeing for it, we could also go for a bicuspidization if required, and if the periodontal therapy is not successful, to eliminate the furcation and to make sure the patient is able to maintain the furcal area and follow the proper oral hygiene in that particular area.
Okay. If you see the OPG, there's no opposing tooth, but will you still go ahead with the treatment? And looking at the OPG, you can decide that there is a very poor oral hygiene, but will you still go ahead with your treatment plan? And you see there are multiple pockets and there's a lot of bone loss involving most of the teeth. But given a choice, will you still do endodontic treatment, do a periodontal treatment? As a private practitioner, tomorrow if you get a chance to do all this, will you do it?
So first, in these kind of cases, we need to make sure that the patient is able to maintain their oral hygiene or not. So if the patient is not motivated enough and not willing to or not able to maintain the oral hygiene, then sir, we will have to go with the extraction in these kind of cases, sir.
But if patient insists that he wants endodontic treatment, he wants to save his tooth for some more time, will you go ahead and do it? Because this is a combination of both endo and perio. These are the most challenging ones that you're going to face tomorrow. And you need to take a proper decision, make a proper decision there. And sometimes just doing endodontic treatment also, there's bound to be some good healing taking place. Dr. Anjani, can you go on to the next one?
That's all, sir.
Okay. Next one. She's come out with a good treatment option. What do you feel, even if you do endo followed by periodontal treatment, what is your clinical success? How long do you think it is going to last? Do you want to recall, do a periodontal treatment again or leave it? Anybody? Can you go on to the next one?
See, the treatment done was as this. Sir, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, please go on.
Okay, as you very correctly said, the root canal was completed, then that is the first endodontic treatment was carried out, then the periodontal therapy was started. So flap was raised, bone graft was placed into the furcal defect, then the surgery was completed. And this is the radiograph of the root canal treatment 2 months after the completion and 12 months after the treatment. Now here, you will see such a great healing which has happened in a matter of 1 year. Now here, to begin with, I would like to bring it to your notice the reason why we have put the OPT. In this, there is a periodontal defect, but still we have not mentioned mobility at all. The tooth is not mobile because the tooth is not in function. The opposing tooth itself is not there. Probably if the tooth was in function, then the periodontal disease would have progressed alarmingly and probably we may not have been able to save it at all. So in this case, this actually was a benefit for us that we could go ahead with both endo as well as perio, and it gave us such good healing after a period of 1 year. So keep in mind that the opposing tooth and also function also plays an important role at times.
There's one more thing that I want to raise a question also. Will you do periodontal therapy first or will you do an endodontic therapy first in such cases?
Sir, in endoperio lesion, it is always advocated to do endodontic treatment prior to periodontal therapy.
Okay.
Because of the more predictable outcome that we can achieve with an endodontic treatment compared to a peri treatment, as well as a faster treatment that can be done and faster results that can be seen after an endodontic treatment.
Okay. Here this is primarily perio followed by endo, right? So here,
yes, sir.
Here given a choice, you will always first think of doing endodontic treatment followed by periodontal treatment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dr. Ponnappa, you want to add anything?
Yes, Dr. Keshav. I just wanted to tell the student, she mentioned about bicuspidization. In such cases, actually, we should never think about bicuspidization, considering the furcal bone isn't there. If at all we go in for bicuspidization, definitely it would be a failure. So we should be careful when we choose a case for bicuspidization. Like looking at the kind of healing which you have secured is really nice. Good healing has come in, and if you observe, even up to 1 year, they have not loaded the tooth, that is, crown isn't present. So the healing has been really nice. As Dr. Ranjini said earlier, the tooth wasn't in function, so the tooth never got extra load. So I think without a crown also, it's got good healing. Nice results.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Keshav sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali.
Over to Vinod sir. Please give us a take-home message.
Is it possible?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Is it possible to allow me to share my screen once?
Oh, sure, sir. I will stop sharing.
So thank you, Keshav sir. It was a nice presentation, and thank you, Dr. Paras and Dr. Ranjini. So anybody could tell us that the choice of our cases for today's discussion, was it helpful for you in your clinical decision, which is going to help you in the near future? Anybody there can just tell us?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It was definitely very insightful because most of the time we'll just look at the radiograph and decide our treatment plan, but which is not correct. And we saw many cases where when we actually clinically evaluated it, the treatment plan completely changed. So I think that was a very important message.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else can add? Do you want to add? See, I have to tell and thank Dr. Ranjini and all my team members who have taken painstakingly putting all these cases, compiling it so that you will have a definite edge over when you go to your practice. But we wanted to put everything in a nutshell and tell you something very important. First of all, patients, why do they come to us? They come to us only because of one reason. Otherwise, no patients come to us. Do you all agree? It's only the pain which brings them to us. And it is an unpleasant thing. See, we are treating the patients physically now, as a physical pain. But do we really look at the psychological aspect of the pain, which is very crucial when you are a practitioner? Please address to that as well. Making the patient as comfortable as possible when you're treating is very important. That starts from your diagnosis. Try to be very, very gentle to the patients. Don't poke, don't percuss in a way that when patient is having severe pain, you're percussing and doing tests which are unwarranted. Rely on your clinical decision and take a good history, which will help you to be a good dentist tomorrow. And a good human treating a patient is very important. All the other doctors, why there are only few doctors who are quite famous is because they address to the basic problem of that psychology when the patient walks inside our private practices. So this is one request to all of you. Treat the patients as humans and not as patients, and never ever address them as patients. They are individuals. That is one thing. The next thing which I wanted to tell you is today we are focusing on, if you have seen most of the radiographs across anywhere, today it's all people are publishing everywhere, I did this, I did that. But what is given importance is to the second point, that it is created big shapes, huge shapes, but the biological environment is not addressed. The amount of irrigation used for 1 molar endodontics is not addressed. The type of irrigation used. So please focus on your irrigation protocols more than the shaping. Shaping, in those days when we graduated, we had only simple point to taper and files. We still were successful because we used good irrigation protocols. That's one request to all the budding endodontists. Please do not focus on preparing the canals unwarrantedly. Just because to save the file from fractures, the manufacturers make these files. Please be anatomical in approach. Try to understand where, before even you put a file, which taper, which tip size, and all these things. See, ultimately, there have been a lot of diagnostic aids which are coming our way. Where to use a CBCT? How much does it cost for the patient? See, what is patient asking us at the end of the time is that how much will it cost? We have not addressed a cost factor in any of our treatment discussions today. So I wanted to bring this up. If tomorrow it was you who is getting this treatment, would cost also be an important part of your treatment decision? and what is the prognostic value of that tooth, and what is the success of that root canal treatment which will last. If you look at the literature, the endodontic success is minimum of 5 years. And if you see a very badly done root canal, not shaped, not filled, is lasted more years, but a well done root canal fails. That's because you're overzealously treated. So please focus on the biological aspect of root canal therapy and not on the shaping of the root canals, where you have unwarrantedly created iatrogenical failures. Today, in my 20 years of practice, I only treat iatrogenical problems, which I feel very sorry to tell my colleagues, my own dentist colleagues have done this. It's not to abuse them, and it is the responsibility of each one of us to train our fellow dentists to tell them to do what is right and wrong. We are all a team. No one is great. We have all graduated from the same books. Have a good ethical approach while treating your patient. Your patient is the center of focus. And finally, what I would like to tell is the clinician's expertise is all that matters. It is not the gadgets. It is the clinical acumen, what you have developed, and 3 years of your life which you have spent in the department. I think you should give hats off to all your professors and teachers who have really taught you, and also thank all that patients whom you have treated for this 3 years who has made you a better clinician. Please don't forget, without having patience, you wouldn't have learned this particular skill and our profession. So, and I also want to tell, I have been using all the gadgets till date and I still cannot find a canal. Don't think that gadgets will self-treat the treatment, right? Robotics will come and do things. No, I'm using microscopes for 15 years, but I know where the microscope is really an edge for me and where it is not. So please understand your tools, but keep pruning your clinical skills. So you are the best, and you are our ambassadors for our profession. We request all of you to practice profession ethically and carry this the great profession. I would say I'm proud to say I'm an endodontist or a conservative dentist and an endodontist. The reason is we save the teeth when we're doing restoration from dying. That means we save the pulp. At the same time, we give. This is the only treatment in the whole medical field that a dead tissue is kept inside the body and still functions as normal. So you should feel great as yourself. Carry that feeling that you're one of the greatest in the greatest profession, and try to do great work. And finally, thank all the colleagues and teachers who have taught us till today. And we have given our part of our skills and knowledge today, and hope you will try to make it much more better in the coming future. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ranjini and team.
Thank you, Dr. Vinod. Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful words. Now I request Dr. Paras to take over to conduct the rapid fire quiz via Kahoot.
Hello, all students. Those who are in their group, can you just coordinate with me? I want their input, like you are able to hear me.
Hello.
Hello, yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Hello.
1 second.
Okay, while we connect with the Kahoot and all the PGs are making
Yeah,
the
where are you guys?
I would like to thank all the resource persons.
It's so late.
Beginning with Dr. Vinod, Dr. Keshav Prasad sir, and Dr. Paras, and our panel experts, Dr. Ponnappa and Dr. Prahalad, as well as Dr. Nitin Shetty for moderating the session. Thank you all. And now I think Dr. Paras can start off.
Hello, all. Can you hear me? Who are there in the room on the dais, students?
Okay, you drive.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So now I want to first convey that. I want to convey that if you want to seriously participate in the quiz, I request all of you to use your mobile. Keep your mobile phone ready, and your question will be displayed onto the screen, where I'll be sharing the slide now. And you go through the question. What is the question asked there? And then the options also will be mentioned below. So you have to read the option. And one thing to remember is that the options are having color coded. They are color coded. So in your mobile phones, you have to answer. So there the options will not pop up. So you will only have the color the respective color. So you have to click on that
Thanks,
color.
Dr. Anjali. Hello.
When you are, so you have to click on the color on your mobile screen. So most of the questions are MCQ type, and some questions are of puzzle, and some are of true and false. So the time limit is 30 seconds. Initially in the trial we did that, we found that some students are having lag. So I mentioned below, extended 10 seconds to read the option. And one thing to remember is that the options are having color coded. They are color coded. So in your mobile phones, you have to answer. So there the options will not pop up. So you will only have the color, the respective color. So you have to click on that
Thanks,
color.
Dr. Anjali. Hello.
When you are, so you have to click on the color on your mobile screen. So most of the questions are MCQ type, and some questions are of puzzle, and some are of true and false. So the time limit is 30 seconds. Initially in the trial we did that, we found that some students are having lag. Okay, so now I'll be sharing the screen. So I request all of you to kindly
So the game.
yeah, so if all of you have opened the mobile, and that you have to type kahoot.it, and then you enter the game pin and enter your name. I request all of you, please put your full name. So don't put some shortcut names like A, D, A, S and all. Just write full name. So I'll be waiting for 5 minutes from now. So for all the, so who are interested students can join. It may take some time for you to enter the game pin and enter the room. So 5 minutes I will wait so that majority of the students can enter the quiz. So we have around 50 participants till now. So the room can host all the participants. So we'll wait until no more participants are there to join. Then we can start the quiz. So this quiz is for 35 questions. In these 35 questions, we have around 20 questions which are of MCQ pattern. 5 are of true and false, and 5 are to identify the personality, and 5 are puzzles. So you will get 30 seconds for all the first 20 MCQ, then 20 seconds for true and false, and puzzle for 1.5 minutes, depending on the type of question. So around 80 students here, almost 80. So 83, so we'll wait for 3 more minutes. So again, remember that your questions will be there on the screen. Only you are using your mobile phone as a keypad. Just you have to select the respective color for the answer, what is there. That color you have to click on your phone. And the way how Kahoot is going to put the slots, like who is first, who is second, is depending on how fast a person is answering. So it all mostly depends on your processor, your mobile, then the internet connectivity. That is most important. So still we try that we can participate the maximum. So we wait for 2 more minutes. Okay. So this quiz is not going to be for more than I think around 10 minutes. Since it is a timed quiz, so it could get over in 10 minutes. Maybe we take some time for answering the questions in the end, though the answer will be coming out immediately after the question. So last 1 more minute, we are going to stay here, then we are going to start the quiz. Okay, I think we shall start now. Okay, so we have a good number of 100 participants here, eagerly waiting for the quiz. So it is just to create some fun, and don't take it very seriously. Maybe some internal lag issue is there, but still you are learning something, and it is a good. Okay, so I think we shall start now. So those people, maybe others may not be able to join the quiz, but if they join, they are not getting the complete questions. So okay, we'll start because the pin they are not able to log in. So here we start now, but the number is increasing. It's become 104. Shall we wait for some time? Okay, we are starting now. So here you go. Question 1. You get 30 seconds. So only 14 answers were there. The right answer is silver citrate dihydrate. Could you go with the next question? So the person who answered right is Riddhumana, and second is Maheda. So the next question is here. So the time was up and only 40 participants could answer. The right answer is actually sweeps. So we go to the next question now. So still Riddhumana is ahead. Identify the pathology.
How much and only 40 So we go to the question now. Still Riddhumana is ahead.
I request one of the participants to mute themselves.
So the right answer is external inflammatory resorption. So only 11 candidates have answered it correct. I feel that the internet connectivity is having some issue, but still who are still connected can continue with the quiz. So the next question is fourth question. Before that, you see the scoreboard. Riddhumana is on top. Fourth question. The ideal placement site of electrode for electric pulp testing on the first molar during pulp sensibility testing. So the right answer is mesiobuccal cusp tip, and 13 participants were able to answer it rightly. So we go to the next fifth question. So Ruxana is on the top of the scoreboard, followed by Deepthi and then Riddhumana. Fifth question. What is the probable radiographic findings? Yes, time's up. So the right answer is vertical root fracture. It is a slightly tricky question. Probably either somebody would think like it's a radix entomolaris or a paramolaris, since the radiographic impression is like that. But you should always look for the PDL. The PDL is missing between the two fragments of the distal fractured root. Hence, it is a vertical root fracture. Abhi Anjum is on the top of the scoreboard, followed by Madiha and then Saujanya. Access cavity design in the image. So it is caries-driven access. So around 14 students have answered right. Okay. So the next question is here, 7th. Identify the instrument used in scouting of Embittu Canal. Okay, time's up. 50% students attempted, and the right answer is Startex tip 2. It is used to scout the Embittu Canal. So you want to identify the Embittu Canal, some dentin has to be removed, between the mesiobuccal one and the palatal canal. So this instrument is very useful for that. So still RB Anjum is ahead. The next question, 8th question, identify the error. Okay, time's up. The right answer is canal transportation. So it could be, I think some students are confused with ledging. So since there is a deviation of the apical anatomy, so this canal transportation is mostly because of the restoring force of the file. So the right answer is canal transportation. The next score still RB Anjum ahead, Dipti and then Meljo. So the next question, 9th. XP endo shapers are made of. Yes. So time's up. So the right answer is max wire. So there was a confusion. Some students have attempted M wire and few fire wire and few also CM wire. So the right answer is max wire. Today you had a session on instruments, and I think I'm sure that this topic was also mentioned regarding the various files and technologies. So the next question, before that the scores. RB Anjum ahead, then Meljo and Bharat. Next 10th. The shrinkage during the setting of thermoplastized gutta-percha is compensated by. Yes, last 5 seconds. Okay, majority have answered right. It is applying positive pressure with plugger while cooling. So you can see the scoreboard. We go for the next question. It is 11th. Calcium Andis mixture is a good alternative to MTA for percussion perforation repair due to. So the right answer is lesser setting time, better handling and sealing. Although statistically there is no significance between MTA and using calcium enriched mixture for Purkinje perforation repair, but studies have found that use of CEM for repairing delayed for percussion perforation repair in delayed cases, that means late repair, it is found better results. Also the handling is better compared to MTA. Okay. So next, 12th. The number of categories for access cavity designs according to the new nomenclature proposed by Silva. Ten more seconds. Yes, time up. Answer is 6. 6 categories were proposed. although the picture given in the article by Silva et al., there are 7, but one is a modification of another. So the right answer is 6. Okay. So Bharat inching towards the top space now. Just few more questions, I think. So we go for the next question. 13th of 30. Krasner and Enko recommended the use of dash as the ultimate North Star for locating the pulp chamber. Yes, time's up. CJ is the right answer. Majority of them have answered correct. Yes. Okay. Next question. 14th. According to Schiffman and Chanalal, the Toradont index of over 30 to 40 indicates. Yes. Time up. So majority of them have answered right. It is Mesotorodon. Okay. Next. 15th of 35. The concentration of triple antibiotic paste with no detectable effect on scab survival. Yes, majority of them have answered right. It is 0.1 and 0.01 mg per ml. It is the concentration at which no stem cell damage was seen. So next question, 16th. The following type of access cavity preparation. So it is a small video. You just see the video and you can answer. Okay, next. Okay, so it is the right answer. 18th question. Identify the instrument. So time up. And the right answer is drug spur. So this burr is used for opening up partially obliterated canals in the canal orifice region. So Meljo now is on the top of the scoreboard. 19th question. Yes, time up. So 15 students have attempted wrong. So the right answer is C3. Okay. Next question. 20 out of 35. Next 20th question. Identify the equipment. Yeah, gentle wave is right. Pips is wrong. Price 2020 checklist or guidelines for. Yes. Case reports is the right answer. Identify the personality. So Bender is the right answer. He is one of the pioneering person in endodontics, pioneer in endodontics. Okay, next question is 23rd. Identify the personality. Yes, time up. Yes, many of them have answered right. It's correct. Dr. James Anderson. Recently, he has passed and he is considered as the father of dental traumatology. 24th question. Identify the personality. So you may see the picture coming up slowly. Mohammad Turabinejad, as all of you know, inventor of MTA. Twenty-fifth question. The pioneer in the field of endodontic microsurgery. Yes, majority of them answered right. It's Dr. Kim. 26th question. One more personality. Yes, Dr. Stephen Buchanan. No change in the scores. True or false? You have 5 questions. True or false? You have only 20 seconds. Yes, true. The right answer. Next. In OTR mode, the torque reverse is activated only when preset torque value is permanently exceeded during 180 degrees. Yes, it is true. Okay. 29th question. The histobacteriologic parameters in true cyst and base cyst or pocket cyst exhibit significant differences. The right answer is false. Actually, it has been found by recent studies that there is no significant difference in the both the cysts except for their communication patterns. So next, the location of curvature has more effect on root canal treatment difficulty than the radius of curvature. Okay, so it is false. So now when we go to the next question in the puzzle, you have to actually use your phone and then you have to arrange the order in which the options are there. The options are jumbled, so you have to arrange them in proper order. This is the last question for true or false. Okay. Majority of them answered correct. It's true. So 4 more questions to go. So puzzle. So you have to arrange these electronic apex locator device in the order of their generations. So you have to arrange which came first. Then that is on the extreme left, and then from the extreme right will be the latest one. So from earliest to the latest one you have to arrange. Ten more seconds you have. Yes, time's up. So the right order is endometer, formatron, root ZX, and elements diagnostic unit. So these are based on the generation, first generation, second, third, and fourth generation. So order remains same. So the position has not changed. Steps in separated instrument retrieval. Yes, time's up. 44 participants have answered it. The correct order is straight line axis, expose, that is staging platform, that is exposed few millimeters of the instrument. Then we have the option of using ultrasonic to activate it. So most of the time the instrument will come out, and if it is not coming, then you can go for loops or tubes to take it out. This is last but one. Arrange the prognosis of horizontal root fracture from good to poor. So you, on your extreme left, you have to arrange the good prognosis, and on your extreme right, you have to arrange the poor prognosis. Yes, the correct order is apical third is got good prognosis. Then you have the middle third. Then the cervical. In the cervical, if it is below, if it is above the coronal to the alveolar crest, it is good. But if it is apical to the alveolar crest, then you have a doubtful prognosis. So the last question for the quiz for today. Yeah, so Meljo is on top, Mahida and Bharat. The order of codes in new system for classifying root and root canal morphology according to Ahmed et al. Is yes. So the correct order is number of roots. First you put the number like number 1, 2, 3. It has got 1 root or 2 root. Then you have the tooth number like 1, 5, 2, 5, 2, 4. Then the number of orifice in the tooth. So 2 orifice, 3 orifice. Then you have the foramen. So this completes the quiz for today, and we'll see the scoreboard now. So bottom third is Bharat Kauda. Second is Maheda Kausar, and on top is Meljo. So congratulations, Meljo, for winning the quiz. The runner-ups are Mrinalini and Arbia Anjum. Thank you for your participation in the quiz. Yeah. So Dr. Ranjini, are you there?
Yeah, I am here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Paras. It was really a fun-filled activity. I saw many people taking part and eager to get a lot of marks. I kept watching the scoreboard. It was really thrilling. Hope all the students also enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I wish
yes.
you all nice evening. And Dr. Nitin, I think you can end the session.
Good evening all, and congratulations to winner. Indeed, it was a fun-filled activity with a lot of information. And I thank Paras sir, I thank Ranjini ma'am and all the participants. And we will be closing the day. And I request the participants to log in tomorrow by 9 to help us conduct tomorrow's session on time. Sorry ma'am, you're saying something?
No, sorry. Actually, sorry for interruption. I would like to thank the organizing committee and the host for giving the opportunity to conduct the quiz and to be a part of this rapid recap program. Thank you.
Thank you one and all once again. So we'll be ending the day today. Thank you so much.